Ready? All right. So when Carrie asked me to do this little event, I got really anxious, I've got to be honest with you. And it wasn't because of talking in front of a big group of people or anything like that. So I talked to my wife about it, and I said, Samantha, I'm really kind of concerned about this. And she said, why? I was like, well, Carrie wants me to tell everyone that I'm a nerd. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, but I've got to be real clear, okay? First of all, I've never seen Star Wars, so any references that you give me after this, I'm not going to understand, and so I guess don't try. But today what I want to talk about is what it means to be a nerd. I want to talk about that a little bit through my life, and then also society's view of being nerds. So first, let's look at Google's definition. Google says that a nerd is a foolish or contemptible person who lacks social skills or is boringly studious. One of those nerds who never asked a girl to dance, or a single-minded expert in a particular technical field. I feel like I'm neither of these. So when I think about this definition, I think a lot about The Office. I think about Jim Halpert, and I think about Dwight Schrute, and I've always kind of fancied myself to be more of a Jim Halpert, but kind of stuck in the body of somebody that looks a little too much like Dwight Schrute. But I wasn't really comfortable with this, so I wanted to step back a couple more steps and do a little bit more research to think about what it means to be a nerd. And I was confronted when I looked through this with multiple different things in pop culture, and specifically in the National Basketball Association, which is one of the weirdest places of all to find information about being a nerd, I know. But the first thing that I found was Russell Westbrook from the Oklahoma City Thunder, who's become slowly notorious for being this nerdy chic individual. And that didn't really help my case because I wanted to be part of a winning team. So I thought about it a little bit further, and I searched a little bit more, and still on that same NBA type of a deal, I found another image. And I don't know that I was really comfortable with it either, but it came up, and until a couple weeks ago, it worked for me pretty well. But then LeBron didn't really want to be part of a winning team either. So today, I'm going to try to take it a little bit deeper in the short amount of time that we have. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my story and talk a little bit about how I have kind of come to grips with being a nerd. And as you can see, it kind of feels like sometimes if you associate yourself with nerds or nerd culture, people tend to put a little bit of a spotlight on you. So let's back up and let me give you a little bit of a story. I grew up in the 1990s when the Dallas Cowboys had a dynasty. So Thunder fans, I guess now you've got something to kind of come back at me with here in a little bit. But growing up and watching the Cowboys, I absolutely loved football, right? I wanted to be these guys. Like, if I could be Troy Aikman in my front yard, I absolutely would have, right? And so I have this giant collection of football cards, and you can harass me or heckle me about that later, too. But when it came to junior high and high school, I decided, hey, maybe I'll try to play football, right? Like, maybe that's something that I can do. So the 5'8", 115-pound Ryan Corwin comes up to football practice, and coach says, buddy, we're going to go ahead and line you up with the linebackers. And for those of you that realize that force is mass times acceleration, you realize that doesn't actually work when you're 115 pounds. So instead I looked to brain sports, right? I looked to things that I could be competitive and I could use my mind a little bit with. And so I settled into debate. In college, that was one of the first places I became okay with this idea that you can be a little bit nerdy, right? You can be a little bit different from what society says is okay, like the athlete. And so today I'm just going to come out and say it. I love electronics, okay? I can spend hours upon hours reading, articles about gadgets and gizmos and the latest Apple product that's coming out or whatever that might be. And I'll be perfectly content with that, right? I also have this probably unhealthy addiction to the TV show The Office, right? I own every single episode and season. I've seen every single one of them and all of the extra bonus content. But anyways, this show can teach us a lot of lessons about life and about ourselves, and even through the character of Dwight, right? This guy that people look at and they think, he's kind of a nerd, right? So what I want to do is I want to look at how society views nerds. Look back at that definition, right? Nerds are foolish or contemptible. They lack social skills. They're boring. They're single-minded. And they're experts in their particular fields. So I've got a couple of challenges for us today. And the first thing is for us to kind of strip out some of those negatives in our perceptions of what it means to be a nerd. If you do that, then all you're left with is nerds are studious experts. And I think that's pretty cool. Ultimately, ultimately today, what I want us to do is I want us to back up and I want us to think about being a nerd and realize that it's okay. You can be a little bit nerdy. You can like something that's a little bit nerdier than the mainstream. If you want to like comic books, it's okay. If you want to be a physicist, it's okay. If you want to drop your team and go play for the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's okay, I guess. And what I want to say is, sometimes we get real focused on the people that are kind of in the front, and we talk about the people that are famous, and Apple's a really great example, right? We talk about Steve Jobs and how cool he was. But if you read his biography, the Isaacson biography, the guy was kind of a jerk, for one. And for two, the guy that really made Apple computers happen is the nerdy guy, Steve Wozniak, the guy that spent hours upon hours upon hours toiling away at this monotonous task that most of us wouldn't be too excited about. So, with that, I guess, what I want us to realize is that how powerful we can all be. If every single one of us admits to the maybe nerdier aspects of our lives, and we can kind of come together and realize that nerds can be yellow, they can be purple, they can be green, they can be anything. It doesn't really matter how you define nerd, but as long as you're okay with it and accepting and loving yourself, and coming to the conclusion that we are all human, we're all people. And at the end of the day, you can call somebody whatever you want, but we're all worthy of that same respect and that same equality here. So, I've got a final challenge for you guys. And the last thing is, while I may not have seen Star Wars, I do want to say that we've got to be out there and we've got to be telling people, we've got to be telling our kids, we've got to be telling our family members, it's okay to be nerdy. And this might be a challenge, so may the Force be with you.